We touched on an episode a while back. We were talking about limiting beliefs and kind of overcoming those. And I kind of want to zone into more of a... We'll see where the conversation goes. But this came up a couple of times in conversations we've had. If there's something I don't like, right, and this is a personal peeve of mine, is there's nothing that puts me off when someone says I can't or I have no choice. Right? I have no choice. Okay. I'm going to say this outright, is that's bullshit.
Yeah.
No matter what happens, right, when you say I can't, you are literally putting that limiting belief in, and you won't. The minute that you believe you can't. Now, I want to unpack this in this conversation because there's nuances to be had here. Because, you know, at the same time I'm going to say is, when you say I can't, right, that means that you're not going to try. You're already putting a limitation on what you can do. You're giving up already. Right? And especially if it's something that someone else has already attained, or it's something that someone else has done. Now, like, there's no reason on God's green earth that you cannot attain the same thing. It would be different. You can't attain the same thing as someone else. Yeah. You can attain your version of that. Yeah. Right. And how I want to unpack this is when you passionately drive for something, right? So you passionately, I am going to go get this. I have made a decision and I'm going to get this. If you fail, right, you fall flat in your face, and for whatever reason you change course and you go somewhere else, but you have given absolutely fucking everything to get it, and you get to a point and you go, okay, life is life, and I might have to redirect or pivot, right? And you then go, okay, let me readjust this way. That's okay. But the point is, there's no point that you say I can't, right? Is I take this going to do a workout session, right? So, we're sitting in the gym, we pop on 315 on the bar, right? Now, you may have gotten 300, maybe you got 280, but you've never done 315, right? But you're close, and I mean you're reasonably close. And you look at that bar and you go, I can't do that. You won't do it. It's no fun.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Right. But if you get in there, right, and you get underneath the bar, okay, within a reasonable ratio, and you get underneath that and you take that bar off, and you legitimately tell yourself, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make it, I'm going to push it, right? And I'll lay back to, that's a champion's mentality. And I get under the bar, it goes down, I start pressing up, I go up 2 inches, and it stops, and I get fucking everything. I pull in that oxygen into my lungs, I drive in my shoulders, I'm stiffening everything. I am literally pressing absolutely fucking everything out of my body, and I fail. It's not a failure. Yeah. You attempted, you drove, you gave everything you had. Yeah. That's the point.
I agree.
Right. And it's also not about attaining what others have. Yes, it's nice to chase standards. It's nice to go, I want to bench 315. I want to make $1 million. I want to own a yacht. I want to have a jet. That's great, right? Because you see someone else have it, you kind of want it. That's great. There's nothing wrong with those goal sets. Right. Right. But theirs is not yours. Yeah. Like I've always said is, if you make $10,000 a year and you did absolutely everything you could, and that was your capability and that's what you earned, you won. Yeah. You won.
I agree.
If you do $1 million a year and you did absolutely everything you could, you won. It's not a comparison.
I think people have a tendency to put a lens on and look at others to compare too much. And I think that's what gets us into this place of like chasing money, chasing, whether it's a weight lift, a sport, whatever it is. And I was guilty of this for a long time too, where like you're constantly comparing to where others are in their careers in life. Yeah. And so it becomes like, well, that's my motive, that's my drive. And I think that's what gets us into a little bit of trouble.
And I agree with you. I think there's benefit to it to a degree. Sure. Right? When you see something can be attained. Sure. And then you zone back into yourself. But what you cannot do is you cannot get to that. And if let's say you miss the mark, or you compare ageism, right? So you go, well, this guy made this at 40. So if I don't have that at 40, I'm a failure. No. Your gain, your time, your press, what you're driving for is all based on you. It's not based on everyone around you. There was someone posted a post probably a couple of weeks back, right? And it's a young couple that's sitting on their second house, right? And they made this post and said, look at us, we've got our second house, we're winning, right? So now my question when I see that is, are you now comparing that to everybody else? So you're going, Right. I'm in my 20s and I've now just signed off my second house.
Yeah.
Good for you. Like, and legitimately,
Yeah.
well done.
It's great.
Good for you. There's nothing wrong with that. But the way the post came across is like you're trying to say, well, I'm better than everyone else because I did this. That doesn't work that way.
No.
You have a long life ahead of you. Shit can go wrong in 2 seconds.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. You could lose everything.
That's right.
You can gain everything. You have
That's right.
to, your perspective of how you determine what you can do.
Yeah.
Right. Because you can do everything.
Yeah, I think being, humble and grounded is important because, like, to your point, like, everything could change in a blink of an eye. And I think, kind of going back to the mindset of, like, I can't, and, like, that whole concept where, like, if you ask me, like, we get in our way so much. Like, we look at someone who is successful.
Yeah.
Like, we talked a little bit earlier today about Tom Brady. Derek Jeter was another name, and then even Michael Jordan, like the three of the greatest athletes of all time in our era. That Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team. Derek Jeter was a small, scrawny, skinny kid. Tom Brady was like a backup quarterback in Michigan. Yeah. And these guys all became Hall of Famers at their sport.
Yeah.
Well, what made them so special?
Work ethic.
They had work ethic.
And they never gave up.
Yeah, and of course, they had this relentless pursuit of winning, and there's a whole different lane we could go down with that we won't. But, like, it's that they're people, they're human beings just like all of us. They put their pants on the same way we all do. They just had a relentless work ethic and that consistency, that just constant effort.
Yes.
And never giving up, never... Well, let's face it, like, when we work out, right? I mean, today, like, one of my infamous poses after some of our cross-training workouts is laying flat on the ground to just recoup myself and recover my heart rate. And you walk by, you're like, "You all right?" I'm like, "I'm good. I'm just recovering." But the whole idea is, like, that shit's hard.
Yeah.
Right? It's not, like, our training sessions aren't easy, especially our CrossFit days or cross-training days. And I think the average person will look at that and go, "That's too hard. I'm not going to do that."
Yeah.
But to me, it actually motivates me and it drives me to want to do it because, like, the one exercise with the grip that we did today with the barbell, like, that was pissing me off because I was having trouble doing it and it was making me mad. I would have kept. I would if you would have stopped me, I would have kept trying.
So in context, so what we did today is we did a cross training session, which is essentially it's a mini strongman workout, right? It's a lot of non-stop, consistently pushing a heavy sled, picking up things, putting it above your head. And one of the exercises we did is we took the axle bar, which is a thick 2-inch bar, and we added on 50 pounds of weight, right, to the 45 pounds the bar is already, and then you pick it up with one hand. Now, again, this is not the same as picking up a dumbbell, right? Mm-hmm. So the minute you go down to the 1-inch grips, your fingers go right round, you grip easy. The minute you go to a 2-inch grip, your hands can't go round. So it tests the hell out of your grip.
That's right.
And even when you use a axle bar or a thicker bar to do other exercises, the minute that your grip has to adjust, you'll be shocked how much your other muscles react to that, right? So that was the challenge we had today. And what we try and do in every time that we hit workouts is we're trying to challenge ourselves. Some days better than others, but it's consistency and then consistently trying to drive that pressure, right? And I had a thought process, recently we're busy closing it and moving to a new house. And, I think about when I was in my 20s, right? And this is about building that mentality as you age, right? But also trying to realize it as a younger age. So if you're younger and you're watching this, when I was 24, I would not imagine doing half of the shit I do now. Like, listen, I did weightlifting, like, and I wouldn't say the easy stuff. Like, I lifted heavy and it was fun, but when something became really taxing on me, I'd kind of fluctuate back towards the things that I was really good at, and I could add weight and so forth, right? And as I've aged, right, with the moving, if I had to add the 4 days of consistent work that we did to just move our entire house, no moving company, right, and moving that whole house out, moving everything into containers, the whole process we went through. And I remember doing this when I was younger in a place 1/5 the size, right, and literally acting like a bitch, sitting there going, "Oh, this is so hard. Poor me. I'm so tired," right? And then afterwards doing that and then still coming to do a workout with you, right? And then still the next day back into workout. The difference isn't, I'm not stronger, right? I'm probably weaker for age, right? Because, as you age, things break down. But what's changed is
mindset.
I don't see tasks as a challenge. I see, or let me rephrase that. I don't see it as an impossible challenge.
Yeah.
Nothing's impossible. And what happens is my mindset, whenever I approach something, is I approach things with the mindset of, I am going to hit this as hard as I can. I'm going to enjoy the process. I'm going to get the work in. I'm going to make this happen.
Yeah.
It's like standing in front of a wood pile of 1,000 pieces of logs that are just piled up, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you walk up to that and you imagine moving that, and you're thinking about how much effort it's going to be to move 1,000 logs.
Yeah.
You can freak yourself out.
Oh,
you can psych yourself out. Go, oh, this is impossible. How am I going to do this? But how do you do it? You start with 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then as you start getting into a rhythm, and your brain goes into a rhythm mode. You slow down, and you start chipping away.
That's right.
Right, and this is the same thing when we go into the gym. This is the same thing when we try a new challenge, whether it be podcasting, a new business. It doesn't matter.
Well, I think a mindset shift that I had over the past couple of years with training was, and I've shared this with a few people. The problem with athletes and even former military folks is athletes especially, physical fitness is used for punishment a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so whether it's sprint work, whether it's whatever, like we were talking about putting the weights back in the wrong place in the gym today, and you got smoked in some kind of exercises for not doing what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So anyway, the whole concept of anytime things got very difficult or hard or like physically like painful, if you will, in the training world, it would cause you to just not want to do it because you didn't want that pain, and you associated mindset of this punishment in that activity.
Yeah.
So I really had to make that transition and shift in my brain.
Yeah.
Where I get to work out. I enjoy the training. Now for me, like today was a tough workout, but I'll be honest with you, I never once thought in my mind that this sucks.
Yeah.
I never thought that.
In fact, you embrace it and you take it on. And this is kind of where we're going with this episode, is you have to take those mindsets, and especially if you're younger guys, and this applies to everybody, right? There's going to come those things in life, right? It may be a dream you want to attain. It may be just a readjustment in what you might have to do in your day-to-day life. The thought of having a new child, moving. There's so many different things that'll happen. Changing jobs, changing businesses, realigning. There's so many things that are going to hit you consistently. Right. But when they hit you, you can either have them hit you as if you're getting knocked out in a prize fight with a boxer, or you can take that hit and embrace it. I think of. When you watch the Marvel movies and you see Thor catch his hammer, right? It's that type of thing. Is you catch it, you hold it, and you kind of embrace it. Now it's part of me, and now I'm going to take it on.
Right.
And when you embrace that mindset and you don't set limitations on yourself, right? And again, society is there's a large portion of society, and it's not just society. It's also got to do with family dynamics. It's also got to do with other people who perceive things that are impossible to them. Like we've said this before, nothing will derail your dreams as much as friends and family.
Totally.
Right. Anybody in your life that's close to you, and attain is anybody who's watching this. Pop a comment down below. Right. Think about this: is how many times have you had this dream? Right. And it sounded outlandish to everyone else, and a lot of times we have these dreams as men. We just shut up. We don't say a word, right? Because someone's going to tell me I'm stupid. We're so worried about what everyone else is going to say. Right. And then the day you do blurt this out, right? Whether it be to your buddies, and I'll give you an idea of how to regulate a good friend versus a bad friend. How to regulate family members that are there to support you versus family members that are just breaking you down. And you go and you relay what this dream is, and you say, you know what, I am going to attain this, right? And then you say this is the person that looks at it and you go, fucking go for it. Yeah. That's the one who goes, you know what, it might be hard, but you can do it.
That's right.
Right. That's the person you want to engage with.
I believe in you. You got this.
I believe in you. You got this. Go do it. Right. Regardless of what happens. But the one that tells you, starts giving you all these reasons of why you can fail. Or, I always call it.
The trap that they set is they'll say, I'm just being real. I'm a realist.
Yeah. I'm just trying to keep you grounded. Right. And I'm just trying to keep you in a certain spot. The thing is, they don't exist, right? Is your limitations are exactly that. They're yours, right? You set them upon yourself. Yeah. So the first thing is don't allow anyone else to dictate your limits. A favorite comment I have, and I'll share a story about something like this, but basically when someone says to you, you can't do that, my response is, but what if I can? Yeah. What happens when I do?
What happens when I do?
Yeah.
And you'll never know if you don't try.
And that's the most important one there is like, how will you know if you don't
you have to try.
At least try.
100%.
And here's the thing is not a half-assed attempt to try and then say, oh, but I didn't. Like really sit down, and if you want something, go sit down and lay it out and go, I want this. And then you put everything to it. We've spoken about creating your own reality, right? And, it might sound like an airy-fairy idea. Well, how do you do that? You do that by taking action.
Totally.
And it's not just taking the action. It's taking the action with an undeniable desire, drive, and consistency to make it happen.
Yeah. Well, simple analogy to that is if your phone's not ringing in business, you got to take action to go make it ring.
Yeah. You got to find
ways to get it to ring, right? So I think back to my time in corporate, to where I was in a company. It was a good company. I'm not going to ever talk bad about them, but their culture was like longevity, right?
Yeah.
And how long you've been with the company, and they make it to where it's hard for you to leave, right? And my whole thing was like I knew, based on prior experiences, I just knew that I could do more. There was more that I wanted to do and accomplish. Yeah. I wanted to live life my way. And so when I finally made that decision in my head, we're like, all right, this is it. We're going for it.
Yeah.
Convinced my wife, like, hey, let's do this. And I made that decision, though, and I had people go, why would you leave that? Because, listen, I was making great money.
Yeah.
I was getting stock options. I was on the path to being a millionaire on stocks and paper, and was doing very well. And for the first time, in my adult life, I felt like financially I was in a better place, but I was miserable, right? As a person, I was very unhappy. And when I decided, like, hey, it's time, I'm moving on, and I got those questions, I was like, well, corporate's always going to be here. I'll never know. That was one of the things that I said to my wife is like, what if I never do this? I'll always wonder.
Yeah.
I'll always want to know what would have been.
It's the deathbed theory, right? So, if you're sitting one day, you're 89 years old, you're laying in your deathbed. Mm-hmm. You've got your family and friends around you, or loved ones. And you're sitting there, and let's be honest, no matter who's around you, there's going to be a point in that time where you go where, let's call it 5 minutes, 1 second, a minute, where you're going to have a thought process, right? You're never going to regret the things you did. You're going to regret the things you didn't.
Yeah.
And a lot of those has got to do with experience and having those experiences happen to you, because those are the things that carry you forward. Now, as you age, right? And I always like to talk this analogy is when I think back on taking on a bodybuilding show, right? And anyone who's and not necessarily just bodybuilding, anytime that you had to cut weight and hit a certain weight or a certain look, or it could be for wrestling, it could be for bodybuilding, it doesn't matter. But when you had to put yourself through an extreme situation to reach a certain point, right? Mm-hmm. Now, bodybuilding is an interesting one because a lot of people take that on because they have the dream of, I want to get on stage, I want to try it, I want to test my physique against other people. Great.
Right.
What I've noticed and what I saw in myself is, right, that first time that you take it on, right, especially when you're younger or even when you're older, the first time that you tackle a actual full-on bodybuilding diet, restricted calories, certain look, it's basically you're going to a very selfish state because it's all about my timing of eating, what I'm doing. It's no matter how anyone goes, it's one of the most selfish sports you can do. Right, but it also translates as you can't do it alone. You need support structures, right? And when you're doing that the first time, right, and you have a coach or you're doing it yourself and you have a plan, you follow that plan like the world doesn't exist because you've never experienced the pain that comes with it, right? And this is also got to be said for as you age of how you determine what you're going to do. So now you go through this process, right? You get to the contest. Whatever happens. You win, you don't win, you come. You do your thing, right? Now you get off stage, and then there's a readjustment where you go back into what I call like a normal, sustainable diet, a normal, sustainable nutrition plan. Mm-hmm. You pick up a little bit more body fat, and you're kind of there. Now what happens is now you have to decide if you want to do it again. Now it's this, and I remember having this. I had my brain go, I really liked looking like that, but man, that was hard. That was so hard, right? And then me personally, the first contest I did was 16, right? So I do the first contest, and then the first one that I really really did everything for her. And I won the title. I was great. Now I'm going to do the second one. Now what happens is I realize what I'm going to have to go through. I know the pain that's coming, right? And my brain couldn't put the pain together with what I had to do. So what did I do? I bullshitted myself. Oh, I don't have to eat that strict. I'll be okay. I'm a big guy. I'll be fine. I can cut calories a little bit here. I don't have to follow as hard there. And I didn't. What happened? Second contest, came last.
Really?
Right. Because what happened is I knew what I had to do. But now I now have to contemplate the pain and the effort. Right. Now, how does this relate to someone who's older, and how does it relate to the rest of life? So as you're aging, think of starting a new job, starting a new business. My wife said she wants to have another kid. Okay. If you've already got kids, you know what's coming.
Yeah.
You have 18 years of taking care of them. College after that, right? All the nappies when they're small, going
Diapers.
through the terrible twos, and going through all that process, right? And as much as it's a very rewarding thing, it's a lot of work. Right?
It is.
Now, same thing is, I've started a business with premium successful, now I want to start another one. You realize what it took to do the first one. There's a risk-reward ratio that we all kind of have to measure together, right?
For sure.
Now, we're not talking about people who have never done it, have never done the first step. We're not talking about the guy who goes, I've never done it. We're talking about you've already done this. What happens is you have to sit down and have that very intense conversation with yourself, right? And go, I can't take shortcuts, because the only reason it worked the first time was because I did it 110%. I gave everything. If I wanted to work the second time, yes, you carry knowledge, you carry experience, but changing an app is changing an app.
Yep.
Like you got a new kid coming. The work's going to be the same. You know what's coming, though, right? So
you're a little better prepared, more equipped
you
for
kind
it.
of understand that, but
it's
also
still going to be there.
But it's still going to be there, right? It's the same with business. Now, what happens is that's a lot of times that I've seen people, especially over their 40s, right? That's why I don't want to go work out. That's why I don't want to, eat, because there's pain that's attached to it, right? There's growth that comes with that pain. You can't attain something without that push force.
I think something that's very real for people in their, probably mid 30s or and above, maybe earlier than that, but and I live this too. Again, I'm an advocate. We both are a big advocate of getting blood work done.
Yeah.
See where your hormones are.
Make sure
especially if you're dealing with extreme tired, that's a huge indicator of something's off. You need to get checked. You need your blood work done. Maybe it's sleep apnea. Maybe it's just simply blood work, testosterone, whatever. But if you don't at least check the engine out and see what's going on, it's going to be really you're facing an uphill battle.
Yeah,
right? So I think you have to start there.
You have to keep an eye on yourself. I always say, listen, there's three places that you, especially as a man, that you really need to keep on. And for women, it's pretty similar, right? The first one is, as you said, tired. If you are tired and you just cannot focus and things just seem really difficult to get through in the day, you have to check it, right? The second is horny.
Yeah.
You're not horny, you have a problem.
That's a good point.
It's like your sex drive needs to be high, right? You're a man. And the third one, and I think to a large degree this is the most important one, is it's how your mood flows in the day, right? Because if you get stress and pressure and so on, is how do you regulate your mood? Do you regulate easily, or do you just let it get out of control?
Well, you said this before on previous episodes, but if you're really moody, if you have these high swings and lows on your mood, there's a testosterone issue most likely.
Well, testosterone, as I'd say, is always going to be the baseline, because testosterone is the driver. I posted a post the other, which is a super interesting study. So 1996, New England Journal of Medicine.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so they took 43 males, right? They ran them through a test.
Yeah.
They split them into equal sized groups. Okay. The first group, placebo, no exercise. The second group, 600 milligrams of testosterone enantate, right? Once a week, no exercise. Third group, placebo with exercise. Fourth group, 600 milligrams of testosterone a week and exercise. Right. The most interesting thing of this, right, is the no exercise group, negligible. Picked up no muscle, with no testosterone, no exercise, they picked up negligible. They did nothing happen. It was just bare results.
Yeah.
The group that did exercise with testosterone picked up an average of 7 pounds of muscle in 10 weeks without exercise.
Wow.
Testosterone without exercise.
Wow.
The group that had no testosterone with exercise picked up an average of 2.5 to 3 pounds.
Wow.
So the group who sat down and did nothing and took testosterone had more gains than the guys training without testosterone.
It's crazy.
Then the guys who had testosterone with exercise picked up an average of 13 to 14 pounds of muscle in 10 weeks.
Wow.
Now, what does that tell you? The most interesting aspect of the study was that 600 milligrams. So your average dosage of cypionate, if you're on TRT, is around 200 milligrams a week.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the average they give you. On 200 milligrams, you'd be able to regulate your system. Most guys can get to that over 1,000 mark, which I think is you have to be. It's got to be over 900.
Yeah.
But the most interesting is at 600 milligrams, which is 3 times the recommended dose of TRT.
Yeah.
They had 0 side effects.
Yeah.
No mood changes, no physiological changes. There was 0 side effects. Now, it's a very small study, and there's not other factors that interfere, but that's a good indication of how good testosterone is for you. You know, before you had these studies back in the early 90s, right? And this was 96, but you couldn't get the information as easily as you do today. And you'd sit down and realize that someone dying in hospital, I mean, this is on their deathbed.
Yeah.
They give them testosterone.
Really?
To boost their immune system and stop muscle wasting.
Interesting.
So now imagine if you're giving that to why is it dangerous to give it to a man? It's not.
Well, in I'll just use me. Like, I was tired all the time. I felt like I could never like maintain a gain when I was working out, stuff like that. Because I did get back into working out before TRT a few years ago. But my weight would yo-yo, and I was not staying consistent with it. And then I found that my testosterone was like the low 200s, like very low 200s. And you should be what I think optimal is at least 600
according
above,
to them.
Yeah, which realistically even higher. But so all right, let's go to the next point of this. So you get your blood work done, you get your testosterone, you find out that the engine's now running better. Yeah. Okay. Now, the next step is the physical gains. And the reason I think a lot of people don't do the physical gains is because you can put in 30 days, right? You go bust your ass for 30 days, you followed a meal plan, and you worked out. And the only thing that really happens is you lose 10 pounds.
Yeah, you feel a lot better, but you're not seeing what you thought you were going to see.
Yeah, you're not seeing like what you think you're going to see.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it goes back to our mindset that it's a journey, and you have to love the process. And I can honestly say, through my transformation journey and the things that I've been down the road on, I legitimately look forward to my days and the things that we do.
Yeah.
I enjoy the meal prep. I enjoy the meals themselves. Like, I've eaten the same shit for probably 6 straight months, maybe longer. I don't really deviate from things. Like, I'm very routine and cadence with stuff. The workouts for me are enjoyable. I mean, we vary our workouts a little bit, but like it's very consistent for the most part. There's a consistent
process of what we do,
But the whole idea is that like it's going to take you time to get where you want to be.
And it's not, and there's no goalpost. The goalpost is your death and having a good death. There's no goalpost.
As you really get into this journey and you actually bear down and find out that you're like, well, originally you have a target, right? You set a goal to say, I'm going to get in shape and I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and then you get to that point and you realize, well, that's not really where I was wanting to go. I'm going to go further, and I'm just going to keep going. But then I actually realize I don't have a destination for this.
No, this is my lifestyle, and this is how I want to live.
And then you have to be able to like, and you will if you truly unravel this. You'll find fulfillment in the journey. You'll find a lot of fulfillment in the process.
And how does that relate to the icon? Well, if your testosterone is low as a man, what you're going to find is you're going to fall into depression really easily.
Yeah.
You're going to have brain fog. You're going to have super unregulated emotional states, right? And when you add TRT or your testosterone levels are optimal, what happens is icon doesn't really become an aspect, right? It becomes easier to navigate these things. So as you said, that's one aspect of it, is make sure that you're as optimal as possible. And you know, the second thing is when you're applying yourself in training, mindset, mental wellness, the abundance mindset, the getting rid of any limitations in your life, right? And you start living that life. What happens is, as men, we're always chasing a purpose, right? Now, our purpose, as I've always said, is there's no future, there's no past.
Right.
The past, you just carry the lessons with you, and the future doesn't exist. You make it today. if you're living that on a daily basis, what happens is you're in the present, you're present in your moment. You find that you just enjoy every day. That's what you're talking about, right? You're not thinking about the next workout, right? Like, I'm looking forward to the next workout, but that's tomorrow's problem.
Right.
I've done my workout today. Now I'm here. I'm present.
I'm in the present.
I'm in the present, right? And by being in the present, you don't overly complicate your life by thinking about what you've done or where you're going. You're just putting in the work now.
I had a friend tell me, this analogy really hit home with me, where, we talk about life being a marathon, right? You've heard this analogy where they say life's a marathon, okay? Well, if it's a marathon, the way you do, and I'm not a runner, but like, you run a marathon, you pace yourself, right? You don't start out of the gate running as fast as you possibly can to finish a marathon. You're not going to, okay? But what happens is everybody, if we're going to compare life to a marathon and we say, well, this is this long term, well, what happens if I die in mile 12? I never finish my marathon, right?
Yeah.
So why would I live my life like it's a marathon? What if I treated it every single day like a 100-yard sprint? I can sprint 100 yards, and I can do that really effectively. Yeah. If every day is a 100-yard sprint, I'm going to give that day my all.
Every day.
I'm going to give it everything I got.
Yes.
And then the next day, I'm going to run 100 more yards. And I'm going to give it everything I got. And I'm not going to worry about the 30th
the next one.
And the 31st or the 32nd mile. Yeah. I'm just going to focus on today's sprint.
Yeah, but
that's all that matters.
But that's a good analogy, because what you're doing is you're not putting it down to a marathon, because a marathon is this long-winded thing where your thinking is, I'm going to go and do what I can do today, right? And your analogy is a sprint. Now,
I'm not guaranteed tomorrow.
That's the thing is, now there's an interesting thought process around that, right? So why do women have lower insurance rates than men?
I think because they're less riskier than men.
And why are they less riskier? Because women are intuitive, and what happens is the estrogen-based system within women means that they look at risk differently to what men do.
Okay.
Right. Men, to a large degree, especially when we're younger, will blindly risk. Right. Yeah. It's when you're young with your friend. You're out with your buddies and they go, hey, look at that. Look, if you climb up that tree, you can jump off. I'll do that. You climb up, jump off. Right. You might break your neck. Right. So it's the risk reward ratio. Men are designed to take risks. That's how we are protectors. That's how we get things done. That's part of the reason that still the building industry, the world economy, how it runs, things that are important, is still generally done by men. Yeah. Right. It's not a knock on women. It's just the reality of our different compositions.
It's just the way we're made.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's an interesting fact in a way that you can kind of rewire your brain. Now, you've got to get over, right, trying to plan in the future. Because one of the things we do is there's nothing wrong with putting stopgaps in for the future, right? So I want a retirement plan. I want to make sure that there's insurance policies, because they didn't think it happened, right?
Well, we're drilled from the time we're children about retirements, and especially in today's world, like it's all planning for the future. It's just an automatic default, in my opinion, for all of us to think about the future because of the way the institutions and the structure is put in place.
And it's not, and what I'm saying is this is how my mind and how I see it. It's not a bad thing. Here's why I want that. Because if I do get to retirement, right, I want to make sure that we're okay.
Right.
Okay. If something happens to me, I want to make sure my wife is okay.
Right.
Right. So that's non-given. That doesn't change my mindset. Right. My mindset is day to day.
Yeah.
And I've always said is I'm going to try and attain every dream I have or die trying.
Yeah.
That's just what's going to happen. Okay. But here's where it becomes the kicker for me. The way I see things is I go back to, you can look into any type of historical, right, warrior mentality, whether that be going back to Vikings, which is, the only way that I attain going to Valhalla is by dying in battle. Yeah. It's the only way. Yeah. Well, dying of old age doesn't get you there.
Yeah.
Die in battle, right? And there's a lot of that warrior mentality which was built into their society so that they could be the most effective warriors when they had to go be it. But now let's bring it back to where we are now. Mm-hmm. Everything that I do on a daily basis, right? And it took me years to develop this mindset and try and hone it in, and I'm still consistently working on it. But my mindset is everything I do, I'm going to do to my absolute best. Now, if that's something that is non-physical, like trying to work and, which requires mental focus and learning new skill sets that have got nothing to do with physicality, those for men come a little bit more challenging because you have to put a different type of effort into it. But it's the same process, right?
Yeah.
I will do everything I can. When it comes to physicality, if I'm going to the gym and we're deciding to do it, there's a point where I'm like, if I die, I die. But literally, if I die here, I die, because my mind says to me is, if I do anything that I do, if I give my absolute all, and I die, I will go to Valhalla.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not that I believe in Valhalla, I'm just giving an analogy. So it's the idea being is that if I drive in everything I do on a daily basis and I truly try and give my all, my maximum attention, my maximum effort into that, right? And again, it's variable. You're human beings, and there's days where you're a little bit more tired than other days, but I really do try and live every day telling myself, regardless of what I do, I'm going to try and be the best version of myself, whether that's the version of kindness, the version of love, the version of physically driving myself, to certain levels. But I am willing to die on that hill.
Well, I think one of the things men deal with the most, maybe this is a stereotype, maybe, I don't know, it's just on my experience. I think worry is a big thing that comes into play for a lot of men. Worry about, relationships, marriages, kids, family, providing support, whatever you want to call that. So I think what we have a tendency is that it eats us alive.
Yes, it's the burden of men.
It is, and I think in my own story, when I finally, and I still deal with it to a certain degree.
You will always do.
Yeah, it's never like it's not going to just completely go away, but I've managed to handle it way better. And I keep saying this, and I'll always say this, and I'll talk about my marriage briefly with this, but like when you are faced with the scenario of I could lose what I care about the most, and then you all of a sudden recognize, well, every day that I have moving forward is a gift.
Yes.
So you are grateful for that moment. So if you live life like that in general, right? If you start treating opportunities that you have, situations that you have, it's just like you said after the gym today, you talked about the choices. Like we always have choices. We may not like them, but we always have a choice, right? And if I have gratitude, okay, in my situation when, things were a really tough spot relationally, I had a choice.
Yeah.
My choice was I give up and walk away, or I fight through the hard
and I keep working
at it. And I chose to work at it. My story's still to be told, but it's way better than it was. But I also recognize, like, you know what? I know this road's going to be really tough.
Yeah.
It's going to be a hard road to travel, but I'm going to have gratitude for every moment I get.
Yes.
And when I did that, it changed a lot of things.
Your perspective of how you navigate your day changes. And, you talk about the pressures of life, right? And I heard a super interesting story. I think it was Shaquille O'Neal, and he was talking about when he just got into the NBA, right? And he went and he messed up a game. And his dad, he flew home, and his dad said to him, "Get up tomorrow. You're getting up at 5 a.m." 5 a.m. He's like, "Okay." Gets home like 1 o'clock in the morning, goes to bed, it's up 5 a.m. Right? Doesn't argue with his dad, and his dad puts him in the car, and they're driving, right? And he doesn't know where they're going. And he keeps quiet because unless dad speaks, I don't say a word, right? His dad drives around and he stops.
Wasn't Shaq's dad military, I think?
Say again?
Wasn't Shaq's dad a military guy?
I'm not sure. Could be, right? And he drives him around, and eventually he stops. And he stops outside a homeless encampment where there's a little tent sitting there, right? And they're just sitting, doesn't say a word. And about 6:30, the dad gets out of the tent. Right behind him is the mom. 2 little small kids. And he looks at him and he goes, "That's pressure."
Yeah.
What you have is, whether you mess up as an athlete, you're making millions of dollars. That's pressure.
That's powerful.
That hurts. That is real pressure. What you are dealing with is not pressure. Now, how do I relate this back to the general guy, right? Yes, you could be the guy on the street with your wife and 2 kids in a tent, and that's pressure. How we relate to pressure, right, is variable to everybody, and you have to try and build up a defense against how you deal with pressure.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you have to put it into perspective, because especially in a very soft society that we live in a very comfortable society, especially in North America, right? And living in that society is, you can live your entire life here as a man and never get punched in the face. It's true.
Yeah, it's true.
You can live your entire life as a man in a bubble, right? down in California, all rich people.
I've known guys that have
and you can, and you can live that life, and you can never see these things happening around you, but they're true and they're part of life. Now, if you live your life like that and you never expose yourself to what the realities of the world is, you'll never develop a pressure building momentum there. You can go, when pressure starts hitting, I realize what it is, and I react to it, and I push back. Now, on the general level, right, is we don't have a clue what pressure is, right? That doesn't mean that things don't make you feel like you're pressured, but you always have to put it into perspective. And I feel a story like that is really powerful, because it's easy to sit, that's humbling. It's easy to sit here and, I can sit and go, oh, my life's so hard. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Right. Their life's hard, but I guarantee if I go speak to that guy that's doing that, he's so zoned in on trying to get his family out of that situation that you speak to him and go, no, we're going to be good. We're going to do this. We're going to get there. Be that guy.
Right.
Regardless what pressure is hitting you, is right. And how do you hit that? There's never such a word as I can't. There's never such a thing as I don't have a choice. You always have a choice. You always can make something happen. It's just on you.
Yeah.
And once you take that on top of yourself and you start going, okay, it's me and I'm going to drive, that's where things change.
You bring up a really good topic of accountability. And we talked about this last week with our group of guys that started coming in to see us. Extreme accountability on everything that happens in your life. Like, you can't blame others. Like, you have to accept everything is your fault.
Yes.
Everything is your responsibility and your fault. You have to be first in things. You have to take the beat on the chest, whatever you want to call it. But, like, you have to accept that if things are going hard right now, it's because of you.
Yes.
If it's going really well, it's because of you. Like, you have to take complete and total ownership. And then I also believe, and we've talked about this, you can't ever give up.
Yes.
Because, like, when it gets tough, it gets hard. I think that's why, like, I don't know, I think you and I resonate so much with this, because our stories are very different, very unique from each other. And we both are very resilient people that just never gave up and never accepted the situations. And I remember a story from my dad. This is relative. When I was 15, I tried out for a baseball team. Well, he was 16. Anyway, I thought I was a shoo-in. The coach basically made it sound like I'm a guy for the team.
Yeah.
I get there, and I had a horrible tryout. I didn't show up. I just did not do well. And I got cut. And that night, I took it really hard, because I was shocked that I got cut, because I thought I was going to make the team, but I knew I had a bad tryout.
Yeah.
So my dad hears me crying in my room. He pulls me out, takes me to the garage, sits me on a bucket, and he's like, listen, like, you have a choice here.
Yeah.
I know you don't like that you got cut. He's like, but you can either let this beat you and give up, or you can make this the best thing that ever happened to you and go work your ass off. And everything that you ever get in your life, he's like, gave me the I don't have a name in this town speech. And he's like, everything you ever get in this life is because you earned it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really good tone. And, like, of course I went and I worked, and I went back next year and made the team, and the other kid didn't. And my story ends up, I played D1 baseball, and, I had troubles there, but that's a different topic. But, like, that's the idea that I put in the work because I didn't let that moment defeat me, and I earned it.
Yes.
And I worked for it.
Yes.
And my dad basically said, like, go work.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do about it, kid?
And that mentality, that advice your father gave you, right, drives in. So when you become the provider of your family, you become the leader of your family, you become the masculine in your family, and you're responsible for that, right, think of yourself as Superman, right? And let me explain the analogy. So why does Superman in the Justice League, right? If you watch comic books, watch movies, why is he always in front? Because he can take the punches that the others can't. Mm-hmm. He can take the knocks and the hits and the punishment that the others can't. You can take more punishment than your wife can.
That's right.
For what we're talking as a masculine man. We're not saying that your wife is incapable. She's super capable. There's things she can do that we can't, right? That she's really good at. But you can take those punches for your family and your loved ones. Yeah. They don't have to.
That's right.
It's not that they can't, they don't have to.
They have to.
It's like you've said before, is having a strong men's group right? Where you, a brotherhood of people that you can connect with, and you can talk to, you can engage with. What that gives you is that gives you ability to discuss things and do things, so you never have to take it home.
Yeah, keep your mess from the home.
Right, keep your mess away from home, right? So that you give your family, you're your best version for them all the time.
Doubt.
And I believe that's a very good analogy. Be the Superman in your household. Be the Superman in your life.
Like Joe Rogan says, the hero of your story.
Yeah, be the person that can take those punches so that no one else has to, and take them with a smile on your face. Right. Take punishment, right? And see punishment as a way of driving and building yourself.
Well, and that's why I'm so passionate about being in the gym doing hard things, because life, business, relationships, kid situations, I mean, people have issues with their kids that cause really strain and difficulties. And these things are real life matters that are very difficult, very, very difficult, right? And if you get in the gym and do hard things there, like that to me is the recipe. It's the fuel that allows you to handle the hard when it happens, because it's going to be there every day, right? So like today, we walk out of the gym today feeling very accomplished. Like we left it all on the floor in there. But it enables us and makes us that much more capable of handling whatever situation comes our way.
Men are physical beings. We're designed to be physical, right? Is our fists are designed to do certain things. Our hands are designed to grip a certain way, right? We're physical beings. We are 2 to 3 times stronger than our female counterparts on average.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. It's because we are the ones at the front of the pack. We're the ones at the back of the pack. We're the ones who take on whatever is coming. We are the protectors. We are the providers. We do that in a way that we can protect our families, but also that allows them to be their best version of themselves.
That's right.
And it's not just being that overly aggressive. A lot of times I'll have people comment on some of the things we put, especially the gym things. They go, "Oh, that's gym bro mentality." I'm like, you're missing the point here. Right? If I'm anything, I am not a gym bro. I like working out.
Yeah,
right. I think it's an important part of my life. I think someone who does Brazilian jiu-jitsu and it becomes an expert and becomes great at it, like that's a hard thing to do.
That's right.
Right. And anything that you kind of attest to, especially a physical thing, is something that's very important to men.
Yep.
And even if it's not, even if you're not the most physical guy, but you find those accolades that test you, that's great. Find them, right? Yep. And try and find a balance between them. As much as I'm talking and we talk about loving gym, I love researching, I love reading, I love learning new things. Be a balanced man.
Yeah.
And that masculinity that we're trying to do, that we talk about the divine masculine that you're trying to innate in the world, is about being that best version of yourself.
Yeah, and I think about myself where being a balanced man, in a relationship at home, like, and some of this is because of how I was raised, but like, you almost felt like if I couldn't be too soft or show emotion or affection towards my loved ones, specifically my wife and daughters and kids, my son. And so when I've really dove into myself and become comfortable with who I am, and this is a point I want to make too, when it came to, like, if you're a father, even a mother, and you have children, they look up at you. And I've seen, like, there's a guy we're helping, and I met his son, and a direct mirror of him, teenage boy, but a mirror of his father, a mirror, okay. Mannerisms, the way he carried himself, the way he ate, the way he looks. I mean, crazy to me, right? And so that really opened my eyes even more so. I've always believed this to be true, but it's like, so they look to you. And if it's not good things that they see, they mirror that.
Yeah, they absorb everything.
So it in my mind, like, and don't take this, you won't, but like when my kids first met you, right? You're a big guy, so they see the muscles and like, wow, like they're enamored by that, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's cool, and I love you to death. But I also was like, I want them to look at me like that too.
You want that for yourself.
I do.
Yeah.
And they do look at me that way.
Yes.
Right? And it's like, as a father, you should want that. You should, like, I mess with my son every night because he sits next to me at the dinner table. And I mess with him every night, and I put my arm out in front of him like this, and he tries to pull my arm down.
Yeah.
He grabs it like a pull-up, and he always tries to pull it down. If we're out in the store or something, I'll put my arm out like this, and he'll try to grab it, and I'll pick him up, or he'll try to pull me down. And it's just a fun little game that we play, but it's also like he'll hit my forearm sometimes, like he'll come up and slug me, and we're just doing stuff like that. And that's just boys being boys, but it's also me saying, like, it's a form of role model to me.
Yes.
It's a form of like, I am big, I'm strong, I'm capable, and I want my son to see that same thing.
And you want him to emulate that. And
That's right.
You want what everybody wants for their kids.
That's right.
Is you want them to emulate the best of you.
Absolutely.
In order to do that, you have to be the best version of yourself consistently.
100%.
And again, that doesn't mean you don't mess up. That doesn't mean you make mistakes. But it's that constant on a present day being in there. And part of that is being able to take on challenges. Not look at them as if they're happening to you, but for you.
Yeah. And it all ties into the whole I can't mentality, because if you keep doing this, I can't get in shape, or it's my genetics.
Yeah.
It's not your genetics. But if you keep blaming it on outside circumstances to get, to continue to be lazy, to continue to be fat, to continue to be out of shape, imagine what they see. They're never going to, are they going to grow up one day and not be proud of you?
Well, the thing is, it's not, here it is, right? So, is you want to emulate. Again, you want your children to emulate the best version of you because you want them to be a better version of you.
That's right.
Right? That's what you want, right? So part of that is also having the mentality. You talk about the average 40-year-old in North America. The average 40-year-old, over 40-year-old, right? The average over 40-year-old in North America cannot run a mile without stopping. Yep. Cannot do 10 proper push-ups.
Crazy.
Cannot go 30 days without a drink.
That part blows my mind.
Right. Now, just think of what I'm saying, right? That those are things that 40 is not like 40. You should be hitting your peak.
Yeah.
This is where all the things you did in your 20s like start kind of emulate. And then what happens is, as you get to 40, now what I want to do is maintain it as long as I possibly can.
Yeah.
But now, just think of that mentality, right? And here's the thing: is if you are over 40, right, 10 push-ups is not a difficult. That's not a mile is not that far.
Agreed.
Not going without a drink for 30 days is not that hard. Mm-mm. But why do I mention this? Because if you are that person, right, and you're looking in the mirror and you don't like what you see, okay, this isn't about looking and going, oh, well, those people are all put together, so I can never be there. That's a con mentality. They were going down the same rabbit hole.
Right.
You can be better, right? You talk about genetics. Listen, you may not, not everybody's a Ronnie Coleman. No, not everybody's a Chris Bumstead. Not everybody's these high-level people that you see on Instagram, right? Yes, you may never look like them, and that's okay.
That's okay.
But you can be the best version of yourself.
That's right.
And that's what you want. So why can't you look the best you can look?
That's right.
And once you see that for yourself, and once you look at yourself and go, I want to be better. Right.
Well, I just simply want you to be proud of yourself.
Yeah, and part of that is, we always talk is, I always feel like the physical part for men, because we're built to be physical, is the first step for me, right? Yeah. Take that physical step. Don't say I can't do that. No, I can. Go start. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard work. But what happens is, as you take it upon yourself to drive forward and be better, and you start with one part, then you add the next piece. Eventually, what you're going to get to is you're going to get to a balanced point of just living in the moment and going, you know what, today's a good day. Because we talk about this in our men's group, right? Once you've put this balance together, and life will have ups and downs consistently, and you're in that balance point, and you go, I'm a pretty well balanced person. I'm always going to be working on something. Right? I'm never going to stop working, because if you stop working, you're going to die. But I'm always going to. I'm in a good spot, right? So now, what do? You help others. What do? You become. Everyone talks about trying to find peace. There's if you look at self-help for men online, and they always talk about men finding peace. I'll give a different perspective on it. I think when men find peace, right, or at least peace that they perceive to think what they want, what happens is they get idle hands. A man's married and finds a wife, they have kids, the kids get older, they go to university, but what happens is through that whole process he's kind of at peace, but then things change and he feels like he's lost purpose. Yeah. Right. And now, in order to find purpose, you can call it a midlife crisis. Divorces his wife, gets a 29-year-old girlfriend, buys a Ferrari, does all these things to try and, try and recapture youth is what they usually say. And I don't think it's about recapturing youth. The only time that I feel that a man tries to recapture youth is as if he's felt like he's missing something. And generally, if he's missing something, it's because he's not putting his best foot forward every day. And there's a balance aspect to that. And that's where you want to tie in all these different little things. You want to work on your spirituality, right? It doesn't matter at what level you are, but you want to have that quiet conversation with yourself, right? You want to be able to express your faith.
Yeah.
You want to be comfortable enough with yourself that you can laugh at yourself, and you don't want to. You don't want to be the John Wayne masculine type. I never smile, I never laugh, I never talk to. Who wants to be that guy? Like that's not a good one. You don't want to be the Andrew Tate of the world. Who just measures everything by sex. Right. You want to understand that sex is a very important part, and it's a driving factor of men.
Right.
But what you're really looking for is intimacy, and in order to get intimacy from the person that you're so connected to,
that's right,
you have to find a way to be emotionally available to them, and have them have a safe space. And as airy-fairy as this sounds to you, if you want to be in a happy marriage, you've got to find that blessing of being so connected to your partner that it's not about sex, right? Yes, we all want sex, but it's actually about intimacy. It's actually about the feeling. And you want to try and drive that through on a daily basis, but in order to do that, you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, totally.
Right, and as you've said, and I've said many times, is exercise is a good segue. It doesn't mean you have to start there. If you feel like you want to start another place, that's great, but it's a good segue.
I think it's the best segue personally, because it just allows you to have confidence. Confidence is a big component of fitness and health, and then you feel good too, right? So when you feel good and you start to look good, and it brings about a much better. Like you said, 200 pounds in the gym number, it doesn't lie, right? So if you can move 200 pounds and you feel good about that, you feel healthy, you feel strong, you feel confident. Look at the things you just accomplished. And I totally agree with what you're saying about relationship, where one of the things you mentioned, like being serious all the time, learning to laugh at yourself. I struggled with that for a long time, and there's probably a lot of reasons we could go down about why, but I've gotten past a lot of that, and man, it's freeing.
Judgment and insecurity, man. Judgment and insecurity. So the first thing is feeling insecure about how other people perceive you, right? Just be. You're not here to please everyone else. What you're here to do is be the best version of yourself.
Well, I think I've seen this happen. It was in me, but also many veterans and former athletes. I've seen this happen too. They get later and older in life. They've put on weight. They're not quite what they used to be, but in their mind they are. Yeah. And then when people perceive them as not what they once were, they'll remind you. Of oh well, this is what I used to be. And in your mind, and this is what I dealt with, where I would well, I'm still capable of doing that, but if you're not moving your body, it's like a boxer trying to say a boxer's going to be good at boxing for the rest of his life because of the fundamentals that he had to repeat over and over and over. He ain't
going to be the same boxer at 60 as he was at 20.
That's right. So if you stop moving and you stop doing stuff, you're not that same guy anymore.
There's a time and place for things in your life, right? And what you don't want to be is you don't want to be the high school jock who peaked in high school.
That's right.
I don't want to be that guy, right? What you want to be is you want to be this ever-growing, changing human being, not the same today as I was yesterday, but always trying to be better and always trying to attain that best version of myself. And then letting go of two things: letting go of your insecurities and just being the best version. If you live your life being a kind, well-adjusted human being, good things will happen to you.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
And insecurity goes out the window. And the other thing that you got to let go of is judging others, right? To try and lift yourself up.
That's a big one.
We talk a lot about, you'll see these comments, and I think Joey Swole, if you've never seen him, he's a bodybuilder. I think he's out in California, right? And he's created a channel where he calls out people who are judging other people for whatever reason in the gym, right? Now, here's the thing. If you see someone in the gym and they're doing something and it looks weird and awkward or different to you, right? Instead of assuming what they're doing, go have a walk over to them. If you're really that interested, go take a walk over to them. Hey, I see you're doing this differently. Tell me why. I will guarantee you, right? There's a reason they're doing it that way. And if you don't perceive the way they're doing it, it's not, if they're happy and they're assuming it, or if they look at you and and go, is there a better way of doing it? And you help them, that's great. But you didn't judge.
All right.
Why don't you do that, right? We post a lot online, and I've seen comments fly through, and you'll have someone look at something we're doing, and the first thing they'll do is like, yeah, you guys are doing that wrong, and I could do that better. Okay, well, first of all, assume that you know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Because everything we're doing has a purpose.
My favorite thing in the gym itself is like, and I've had this, it hasn't really happened lately, but I've had people, will say something about certain things, and my move in the gym is always invite them.
Yeah.
Would you like to join us?
Try it out.
You're welcome to join us and show us how it's done.
Yeah, I have no problem. And here's the thing is, I don't care if you can do it better. Come show me. If you have a better way of doing it, I'm very keen to learn. The point I'm making is, there will be days where we're in the gym, right? And we're pretty big guys, and I'll do a shoulder workout, and I'll do it with 5 pounds, and I won't do any heavier. Now, if you're walking in the gym and you're up for judgment, right, and you want to judge, you go, oh, look at that big guy, he can't pick up more than 5 pounds. Dude, that's just day 1. Come on day 2, 3, 4, 5, and you'll see that what I'm trying to do is I don't care about how much weight I lift. I don't care about what someone else is doing. I have no judgment on anyone else's training. If they want help, I'll give them as much information as possible. They take it and do what they want. But the point being is, you are there to get the most out of your workout.
And I'll also say, if you see us grabbing 5 and 10 pound dumbbells, that shit's about to hurt.
Yeah. Just don't judge others, right? Yeah. Let them be who they are.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're that interested in what they're doing, go have a conversation with them. There's many times where I'll see someone, and honestly, the most dynamic trainers are usually females. They find these weird wonderful exercises, and I'll go sit and I'll go, what does that do? She'll explain to me. I'll go, and I'll try that the next workout, because who am I to judge how someone does something? Yeah. You are not someone else's judge, jury, and executor.
There's all kinds of exercises, all kinds of knowledge, and all these things. You can learn from anybody.
Try to be that person that doesn't judge. And if you can let go of judgment and insecurity to the large degree, you'll never let go of it completely because we're human beings. Yeah, but if you can try and be that person, right? Those are the first two. And then the third one is eliminate negative context words from your vocabulary.
That's huge.
Let go of those words that drag you down. Let go of the word I can't.
Yeah.
I won't. I have no choice.
No problem.
Yeah.
My bad. Things. It's
create.
You shared that with me.
Create 1,000 solutions for every problem, not 1,000 problems for every solution.
Yeah.
Right there, you'll change the way you see the game.
For sure. Yeah, I'll share a kind of final thought around this is that, mindset is everything. And hopefully you hear us saying, like, you have to break through the walls of limiting beliefs.
Yes.
You have to do that. Stop convincing yourself that you can't do something. Stop, looking at, well, they're just blessed. They have genetics. They have whatever. No, we work really hard. We've broken through barriers. Me personally, like, I've been through a boatload of stuff. We all have. And I was tired of making excuses. Yeah. And I said, enough's enough. And I said, I'm going to move all that out of the way. And I broke through.
Let go of the excuses, man.
And it's a freeing life.
There's no such thing as can't. There's no such thing as no choice. There's no such thing as an excuse for anything. Mm-hmm. Find a solution. You're a man. You're designed to find a solution to a problem. That's literally the purpose of life, is to solve problems.
Definitely.
Find them for yourself. Stop making excuses. Stop pulling other people down to make yourself feel better about your inactivity.
Right.
Go do the things you want to do. If you want to try something, go try it.
Right.
For God's sakes, you cannot complain about something if you're not willing to pick your foot up and try.
I totally agree.
Piece by piece, section by section. Last shout out I want to do is June is men's mental health. We like to call it mental wellness, right? I deviate away from the health aspect because there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
And we talk about the suicide rate. Veterans have a very high suicide rate. A message of encouragement. If you're watching this and you feel that way, right? Other than the avenues you have, the phone numbers, the places you can talk, go find those motivations in there, right? But the most important thing is, you can watch podcasts like this and you'll find a lot of good information. But in order to get yourself out of the darkness, right, you have to take the first step. Mm-hmm. Take those steps. Realize you're not alone. We're all suffering together. Yeah. But it's not suffering. We're all learning. We're growing. We're moving forward. And if you're a man out there and you know someone who's suffering with this, is find the numbers, find the way to help them, and just be there for each other.
Yeah.
We can really stop this by just realizing that all men are suffering in some way or another, And most of that suffering isn't truly suffering. It's dealing with life and trying to find, and not, you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah. And no matter how hard things are, no matter how bad the situation, no matter what you've been through, like there's people that you can lean to.
Yes.
There's people that are, that's why we're creating this group. We're creating, because there's avenues of help.
100%.
You're not in it alone. And taking your own life is not the answer.
Yeah.
At all.
So that's today's message, boys.
Thanks for
There's
listening.
no such thing as I can't.